far beyond of the average car in all respect. And so it's a kind of a star, and which comes into the market, and even average people who cannot afford a new SL will talk about it.
Active and passive safety are the areas given highest priority in the production of the vehicle. The SL features acceleration skid control, which improves the road holding capability by increasing traction under certain conditions. The automatic locking differential prevents wheel spin when there is little or no grip on the road surface. Mercedes has also taken the development of car seats in a new direction. The frame is made from pressure die-cast magnesium, increasing the rigidity of the seat and improving its load-bearing capacity in an accident. To further enhance occupant safety, the seats are electrically adjustable, with the seat belt interconnected with the headrest. This makes for an optimum belt position, no matter how tall you are. The optional soft-top convertible really gives you the chance to impress your friends. On a day such as this one, when there's no need for a roof overhead, well, that old push-of-a-button cliche wins out again. With the new SL, there's no need to concern yourself with such petty and tiresome details as folding down the roof. An electro-hydraulic system in the car does the job for you in about 30 seconds. Perhaps the outstanding safety feature of this car is the extendable rollover bar. Now, while I activated it myself that time, it's also triggered automatically. Sensors measure the acceleration, suspension, and the angle of the body in relation to the road. If they detect a potentially critical situation, the bar snaps into place in less than half a second. The microprocessor control unit will activate the bar only once a hazardous situation has been unmistakably established. A catch is released and the spring components are instantly disengaged from the hydraulic system. Another graphic slow-motion sequence demonstrates the structural integrity of the passenger compartment. Airbags for the driver and front seat passenger are optional. Once again, a sensor determines the severity of the accident. The bags are inflated if a predetermined threshold is exceeded. Indeed, an SL buyer is faced with a wide range of options. The SL is available in 3 models, of which this is the top of the range, 5-litre V8, developing about 330 horsepower. One of the optional extras Mercedes has for this car is an adaptive damping system, which constantly adjusts the suspension of the vehicle according to the road conditions. And as you can see right now, they're pretty rough. But even in these sorts of conditions, this car is a joy to drive. Mercedes claims the new SL has bridged the gap that existed between sporty handling and a comfortable ride. In tandem with the damping system is a level adjustment control, which lowers the body of the car at high speed to reduce drag or raises it for driving over obstacles. The SL is another step down the road to intelligent cars.
Most of all, sensors and computer devices will help us to exclude the driver as a very weak member of the chain and to correct his errors.
With the new car, the company has launched 3 new engines with refined emission control systems and automatic camshaft adjustment to increase the torque. The choice is from a 3-litre 6-cylinder 2-valve engine, the same engine with 4 valves, or the 5-litre 4-valve V8. From the deserts of Death Valley to the snow-laden Austrian Alps, the R129 was thrashed and bashed across 6 million kilometres of road and terrain before meeting the required production standards. The result is a car that packs the Mercedes-Benz pedigree into every twist and turn. As one might expect, there are all the extra little creature comforts that represent the icing on a mouth-watering cake.
About 20,000 a year will roll off the Bremen assembly line. And yes, the word is well and truly out, so get in early.
Simon, your time is up now. We need the car.
Well, Jürgen, I'd really love to, mate, but you got to catch me first. Wait a sec!
After the break, a device to analyse the air we breathe.
What did we do again?
We put my super in a rollover fund.
We can get it out.
We want to.
It is safe.
It's with Iain Finley.
What's it doing?
Well, ours gives us tax advantages, a good return, and security. Right?
Okay. But what am I going to do with you?
That is ozone, the very stuff we're trying to preserve and replace in the upper atmosphere. Well, up there, it's okay, because it protects us from the harmful ultraviolet radiation that falls on us from the sun. Down here, we don't need it, because it causes serious respiratory problems, and also it destroys crops, plants, and trees. But now there's been a new breakthrough in smog measurement and control. It's an Australian invention called AirTrack, which is powerful enough to locate illegal sources of pollution and could play a major role in reducing levels of photochemical smog in cities around the world.
This is the nerve centre of Melbourne's Environmental Protection Authority, or EPA, which analyses information collected from 9 field stations in and around the city. One of the laboratory's main tasks is to develop mathematical computer models of smog formation as a method of smog forecasting. But it's been a laborious and time-consuming process.
This is a fairly typical air pollution monitoring setup. There are instruments here to measure ozone levels, nitrogen oxides, hydrocarbons, and haze, or the visibility. But although this system, and variations of which are in operation all around the world, produces a wealth of detailed information, it's all but impossible to get a clear picture of the dynamics of smog production in a given area. It requires, for example, hundreds of simultaneous differential equations relating to an equal number of chemical reactions to get anything like a picture of what's happening over a large city like Melbourne at a given time. And that's where AirTrack comes in.
AirTrack's revolutionary capabilities can best be described as being able to measure all important smog-forming characteristics from a single sample of air in 45 seconds, predict the future course of smog formation for that parcel of air as it's swept away from the monitoring station, and, most importantly, determine the age of smog, which means that, with information of wind strength and trajectories over previous hours, the location of the source of pollutant emissions can be determined. To produce smog, you need 3 things: hydrocarbon vapors, which come from motor vehicle exhausts, nitrogen oxides, which come from motor vehicles too, but also from big furnaces, factories and refineries, and sunlight. The hydrocarbons act as a sort of catalyst to the complex reaction that sunlight causes in the nitrogen oxides, reducing their levels, but creating at the same time quantities of ozone, which becomes the photochemical smog. If the nitrogen oxides are used up, or the sunlight stops, then smog production also stops. Studies by Dr. Graham Johnson using these special smog production chambers at the CSIRO's Sydney laboratories led to a new understanding of how smog forms, and to the joint development with a company called Mineral Control Instrumentation of the new AirTrack machine.
With the front cover off, you can get a good look at the innards of the AirTrack. The most important element is this photolytic reactor here. It's actually a chamber within a chamber. The inner container holds the air sample to be tested, and the outer one holds a pure environment of clean air. The inner chamber is subjected to ultraviolet light of roughly the same intensity as bright sunlight. So I'll just put my sunglasses on and we'll give it a go. I'll just leave that on for a few seconds because UV light can be dangerous. Switch it off. And underneath here, there's a matching pair of chambers in which a sample of air is passed through in total darkness as a control measure. Down below is one of the world's most sensitive nitric oxide analyzers developed by MCI, especially for the AirTrack machine. On this side, behind the panels, a system of smog concentration analyzers and dual computers to drive the whole system.
The air sample is sent down 3 separate paths. The first takes an unadulterated sample directly to the nitric oxide analyzer. With the second and third paths, a minute amount of nitric oxide is added. One part of the sample goes through the dark chamber, where the nitric oxide reacts with whatever ozone there is to break it down. In the light chamber, the nitric oxide reacts with the hydrocarbons and light to produce new ozone. Both paths lead to the nitric oxide analyzer and the computer, which by comparing measurements from the 3 paths and using meteorological inputs, can produce information on smog age, concentration and formation, as well as the sources of pollution in the air.
I think the real initial breakthrough was finding out that we could express smog very simply by just a couple of parameters instead of a whole multitude, and that allowed the real progress with the smog chamber work as well as the eventual development of this AirTrack instrument.
And those parameters?
Well, those parameters were finding a way of putting into the one measurement basket all the different compounds that form smog and calling that smog concentration, and finding an easy way of taking account of the way the light changes during the day.
Well, if it lives up to its promise, AirTrack seems on track to becoming a major weapon which clean air authorities around the world will hopefully be able to use in their efforts to reduce levels of photochemical smog and air pollution generally.
In hot countries like Australia, car air conditioners can be a necessity rather than a luxury. But few people realise their comfort could be at the expense of the environment. Refrigerants contain chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs, and as you know, they've been implicated in the destruction of the ozone layer. But what you probably didn't know is that they're deliberately released during scrapping or maintenance of air conditioners. Large-scale refrigerant recovery machines are available for industrial air conditioners, but until recently, smaller units suitable for car air conditioner maintenance have been rare. But this compact portable unit was developed at the specific request of the United States Environmental Protection Agency. The refrigerant is drained off as a gas and condenses into a liquid, and of course then it can be recycled through filters and used again. Until safer fluorocarbons become freely available, recovery and recycling systems like this can help reduce CFC emissions by an estimated 10 to 30%. Let's hope they become mandatory equipment in all vehicle service centres and wreckers' yards. Now, you can also help matters by keeping your car air conditioner in good working order. Turning it on every week, regardless of the weather, keeps the compressor seals well lubricated and minimises leakage of CFCs. Oh, and an added bonus is, come summer, you shouldn't need to regas it. Using chemotherapy to beat cancer without the side effects. That's next.
The anti-cancer drug directly into the tumour, bypassing normal cells. The man responsible for the technique is Dr. Hiroshi Maeda, a leading microbiologist from the University of Kumamoto. He's been a pioneer for many years in the field of cancer research. 20 years ago, he developed an anti-cancer drug, NCS, that successfully treated a number of solid tumours. But the drug was highly unstable and produced severe side effects. His next goal was to develop a form of treatment using NCS that left normal cells undamaged. Various attempts have been made in the past to target drugs to specific tumours. Missile therapy, as it's known, and it's met with some success. It means that higher doses of the drug can be used with fewer side effects, because hopefully the drug will attach itself only to the cancer cells. But sometimes the missile explodes in the bloodstream before it reaches its destination, and in other cases doesn't go off at all. Ultimately, to get where it can do the most good, the drug has to go inside the tumour, via the blood vessels that feed it. Dr. Maeda's solution was to join the NCS to a polymer, or a stabilising molecule, that because of its larger size, could piggyback the cancer drug directly to the tumour, making use of the unique vascular properties of tumour blood vessels. The blood vessels that feed normal tissue are slightly permeable, but they allow only small molecular substances to leave the bloodstream and enter the cells of the tissue. But blood vessels that feed a tumour have a high permeability. They are much leakier than normal vessels, so many molecules traverse the blood vessels and enter the cancer cells. The polymer Dr. Maeda has added to his cancer drug makes it bigger and heavier. It's far too big to cross the wall of regular blood vessels, so it doesn't penetrate normal tissue. But it does leak out of tumour vessels, and it's easily assimilated into the cancer cells. Because it makes a direct hit, stronger doses can be used without the corresponding normal cell damage. This rat tumour has been injected with the compound. This is 6 hours after treatment, 24 hours, and 72 hours. You can see how the drug is confined solely to the tumour. There's no leakage whatsoever to surrounding tissue. The new compound is a complex chemical chain that looks like this. It's known by its acronym, SMANCS, and the polymer added to the drug is actually a string of cleaning fluid molecules. Dr. Maeda discovered it reacted well with the cancer drug, and not only made it the right size, it disguised it in such a way that the human body didn't treat it as a foreign substance. The drug can be administered in a saline solution or in a lipid or oily form, and the advantages of the oil are many. It releases the drug slowly, so injections are required just once a month, compared to other forms of chemotherapy where the injections are daily. And the oily substance is visible under X-ray and CAT scan, so the condition of the tumour and the effect of the drug can be easily monitored. Dr. Maeda has had most success with SMANCS in the treatment of liver cancer. More than 230 liver patients, most of them suffering from inoperable tumours, have been treated with a drug in a series of clinical tests. And the results are quite remarkable. 90% of the patients had a decrease in the size of the tumour. 50% lived longer than a year, and these were quite hopeless cases. And 90% of those with first-stage cancer lived longer than 3 years, though they'd have only 6 months if treated in the conventional way. This CAT scan shows a diminishing tumour in the liver of a 70-year-old woman. The marked area shows the size of the tumour before treatment. This is 10 months later. 17 months. Finally, at 20 months, the tumour disappeared altogether. Without treatment, she was given just 1 month to live. The same technique has also had some success with cancers of the lung, pancreas, stomach, ovary, esophagus, even brain. And while it appears revolutionary in its ability to beat the cancer, equally important, according to Dr. Maeda, is the lack of severe side effects. There's only slight fever, some abdominal pain, and in very few cases, vomiting and nausea.
After a short period of hospitalization, the patient can go home and live like as he or she used to be. And then 1 month later, patient can come back for the subsequent injection.
SMANCS is now undergoing further tests and will then need approval by Japan's Ministry of Welfare, the body that clears new drugs before they enter the marketplace. So it will be at least 2 years before it's in clinical use. But judging by the results so far, this apparently safe, reliable way to administer cancer drugs is bound to have quite an impact.
Is becoming cluttered with his garbage. At the University of Arizona in Tucson, the Department of Aerospace and Engineering is building a space janitor, which will not only clean up the mess, it'll also make use of junk already in space to make it work more efficiently.
This bizarre-looking craft may well become a common sight in orbit around our planet, eating its way through space debris like a sort of interstellar Pac-Man. The development of vehicles like this one signals the menacing role that space junk now plays in space activity. Since the first rocket entered space in 1957, almost 20,000 pieces of hardware have been launched into Earth's orbit. Some of these objects have fallen back to Earth in spectacular fashion. Others have been consumed on re-entry to the atmosphere. but many are still out there in various forms of decay. At last estimate, 2.4 million kilograms, or 5 million pounds of debris was circling our planet, and that was made up of more than 7,000 large objects and millions of smaller particles produced by exploding satellites and spent rocket stages. Most of the debris is concentrated in heavy traffic orbits between 5 and 1,500 kilometres, or 3 and 900 miles above the Earth. The majority of US and Soviet manned space activity falls within this range. If this volume of waste continues to expand, space travel could become a hit-and-miss affair. Collisions between spacecraft and space junk are becoming commonplace. Satellites are routinely bombarded with small man-made particles, some inflicting severe damage. In 1983, Space Shuttle Challenger was hit by a fleck of paint, causing $50,000 worth of damage to the windscreen. The paint was apparently from an old US Delta rocket launched 10 years before. The space janitor can do little to clean up the millions of particles travelling like bullets around the Earth, but it could make a start on the larger known objects before they explode into pieces. The North American Air Defense Command in Colorado, USA, does its best to keep track of pieces bigger than 10 centimetres or 4 inches in diameter. Among their catalogue of 7,400 items are derelict satellites, spent rocket stages, and Soviet nuclear reactors. These will be the main diet of the space janitor. Once deployed in space and armed with mirrors, lenses, and robotic arms, the craft will attach itself to the object, then dismantle it using a solar cutter.
The real thing is 3 times larger than this prototype, and it folds up like an umbrella so it can be easily stored on board the space shuttle. The design is very simple, and it uses well-proven off-the-shelf equipment, because the last thing you want a space junk collector to do is break down and become junk itself. The janitor uses photosensors to track the sun and focus its mirrors, and on the larger model these functions will be controlled by a microprocessor. The mirrors are gold-plated because gold reflects infrared light better than silver, and the sunlight's reflected from the mirrors through these 5 Fresnel lenses, which are lighter and more compact than conventional lenses, and it's focused to a point underneath the center lens. You'll see just how hot it is when we put this aluminium under there.
On the ground at the University of Arizona, the mirror lens configuration produces a cutting temperature of 300 degrees Celsius, or 600 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 70% of the energy that can be harnessed in space. This temperature will be all that's needed to cut through most space junk. Because satellites are built for microgravity, they're not made up of bulky materials. The pieces will be stored on board, and once several objects have been cannibalized, the craft can either wait to be retrieved by space shuttle or propel itself towards Earth's atmosphere to be consumed on re-entry. The janitor's designers hope to make it smart enough to use valuable debris like reflectors and solar panels for its own use, adding to its cutting power or increasing its operating time. Of course, space is an expensive workplace. If janitors are to be used in the future, they must be economically feasible.
They would not be cheap. I would guess at this time that the total cost of producing one would be probably in the range of $1 to $5 million, which is really not much at all for what was spent in putting those pieces up there in the first place.
Humankind is only 30 years into the space age, but already it seems we're polluting the new frontier. Without a realistic cleanup campaign, our Earth orbits could become as cluttered with waste as is Earth's surface.
Just one machine janitor, as you said, going out will probably clear approximately 3 to 10,000 pounds of junk, anywhere in that general range. So one machine by itself may not be able to make a big impact, but if you had a fleet of these, they could make a big impact in approximately 1 or 2 years.
Future projections by NASA's space shuttle programmers are alarming. Presently, a shuttle's chance of collision with debris stands at around 3%. By the year 2000, that chance will increase to 10%. And in 2010, a manned spacecraft will have a 25% chance of being hit by a piece of space junk. But with human lives and millions of dollars worth of equipment at stake, no doubt space janitors will come into their own well before that.
Relaxing in the great outdoors. It always seems like a good idea, but once you get there, it's easy to miss the comforts of home. Where do you plug in your hairdryer, for instance? Well, that may be an old joke, but it's not far from the truth these days, thanks to solar power. This briefcase is a portable 12-volt power source. In here is a set of batteries, which can be recharged by this array of solar cells. It's just a matter of pointing these at the sun and plugging in. When it's set up, any equipment which normally runs off a car battery can be powered by the solar pack. So even in the middle of the desert, you can watch TV, keep your drinks cool, even run a spotlight. Not bad. Environmental research will also benefit. Scientists will be able to power a range of data gathering gear without having to cart around bulky generation equipment. So all of this makes life in the wild a whole lot easier. Oh, unless, of course, you've forgotten the adapter for your electric blanket.